you have to have humility to be able to sit at the table and know, hey, this person's younger than me by 15 years, but they deserve a seat at the table.
Right.
This person is younger than me by 15 years, but they deserve my time and my ear. And I can't just only surround myself with people that are my age or older. I can't just only surround myself with people that are more experienced or higher up than me. I got to be able to have people around me that maybe on the ladder, so to speak, would be below me, and then give them a chance to speak into my life.
Welcome to Transparent Woman, a podcast created for women by women. We discuss the ways faith and life intersect while challenging cultural norms with biblical perspectives. No topic is off limits here. We are real women with real stories growing in real faith. So pull up a chair and join the conversation.
Hello, welcome to Transparent Woman. We're so glad you're here today. My name is Frida Hill, and I am a local pastor of a growing network of house churches. And today I have a very, very special guest with me. His name is Pastor Jeremy Williams. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself. Pastor Jeremy, would you mind?
Well, hey, Frida, first let me say thank you for inviting me and doing this podcast together. I'm looking forward to it. I'm an associate pastor here at Dallas First Assembly. My wife is a school teacher in Marietta City Schools, and I have 2 middle school children. So that's a little bit of my background. Been doing ministry for 17 years. So learned a lot over that time and happy to share.
Well, I really appreciate that you're here because many people don't know this, or, you know, he does acknowledge me in public, thank goodness, most of the time, right?
Yes, I do. I will call you friend.
Oh, thanks. You heard that here. But you were actually very vital and important in while I was interning at Dallas First Assembly. You kind of took me under your wing too and mentored me in so many things, taught me more about pastoral care. And one thing that I gleaned from you that was so very important was humility. And I watched you humble yourself so many times and do the jobs that maybe someone else wouldn't want to do. You always were humble in heart, and that really impressed me. And so that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, because 'tis the season, it's Christmas time. And so Merry Christmas. But we want to talk about, because Jesus, you know, the Jesus we serve, our Lord and Savior, he came to earth. He gave up his whole kingdom in heaven, all the riches, all the glory, and he came down here on earth to become just a meek human being. And so he humbled himself, the Bible says, even to the obedience to go to the cross, because he loved God so much and he loved us so much. And that's humility. And he was beaten and went through so many difficulties, and he never once was mad about it. He never complained about it. And so I've watched you example Jesus before me and many others that, you know, I know that you went through hardships. You know, you were one of my mentors. So we've gotten to talk about things, and you've given me some really good guidance and leadership and how to be a pastor. And I've watched you handle people in such a humble way. And so I would love for you to tell us all, how do you do that? What's some practical steps in carrying that character of humility out every day?
Sure. So when I think about humility, I think about 5 characteristics that you see in life. You'll see counterexamples, and you'll see examples of humility. And I'm honored for the fact that, you know, in our relationship, you've seen me model that out.
Absolutely.
And I would like to say that's obvious and evident in all my relationships. But one of the things that I would say, one of the first characteristics that you're going to notice in someone that's humble is there's really not a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with someone who is humble and you look at someone who's not, then the difference that you're going to see is this. Someone that's humble, they're not worried about the corner office.
Yeah.
They're not worried about the name on the door. They're not worried about elevation.
Yeah.
all of those things. They're more concerned with making sure that they do things the right way.
Yeah.
And here's another thing, an example of someone, and I'll confess that there were times in ministry that I had to fight through this, is it's very easy in our human nature to look around and feel like that we're the smartest person in the room, and we're sitting at a table with people that aren't as smart as us. And it's easy to question God. Okay, you've placed me here, and I feel like I'm smarter than everybody at this table. And it would be very easy to say, I'm working harder than everybody in this room.
Yeah.
But yet I don't have the name on the door, or I don't have the corner office. And for someone that has humility, they're able to realize that I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Right.
Or at the very least, everyone at this table is equally as smart.
Right.
They're able to realize that I am working hard, but there are people that are on this team, in this organization, at this church, whatever you may be dealing with, that are working just as hard, and they are in a lesser position than I am.
Right.
That's one of the things that the Lord spoke to me is, you have moments where you feel like you're working harder than everyone else, but you need to remember that there's people here and right here with you that are working just as hard, and they don't even have the position or the title that you have.
Right.
So instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what I've given you.
That's good.
And know that there are going to be people that are working just as hard, they're just as smart. And so someone that's humble, the first characteristic I think about is they're not worried about the entitlement.
Yeah.
You know, they don't do things and feeling like that they are left out, or why don't I have this?
Yeah.
So another characteristic that I think about when I deal and think about humility is that, and you mentioned this a moment ago, when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about someone who was in the highest of places.
Absolutely.
He was sitting at the right hand of the Father, and he chose to walk away from all of that.
Yeah.
Because he loved us, and he came to earth, and he showed the way, and he lived a life that was blameless so that we could be saved. And so someone that has humility or is modeling that is they don't mind being in the low places. They don't look at a situation and say that the only job that I want is the one that's going to bring the most attention to me.
Right.
That's going to advance me. They don't mind being in low places. They don't mind doing jobs that maybe we would call menial.
Right.
And they're willing to do that. Someone that's humble walks into the team, the organization, the church, and says, okay, what can I do? Okay, I'll give you a quote from John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Which this is in the 1960s. It's 50 years ago, but it's a wonderful quote. And here's why. Because as ministers or as leaders, if we're in a team and organization, we really should ask ourselves, okay, what job can I do? What can I do to make this organization better?
Right.
Even if it's a smaller job, let me do that. And there are going to be times where we have to do the big jobs, but there's going to be a lot of times that we have to do the small jobs. And that's what it needs. That's what the team needs, the organization needs, the church needs. So you got to be willing to be in the low places and not always have to be in a high place. And if you lack humility, then you're always going to want the job that brings the most attention. You're not going to always have the team or the organization's best interest in mind. And it's going to cause damage.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect the ability for your team, your organization, your church to grow. I think about it this way. I feel like that I'm a high capacity leader.
Right. Yes.
And if you're a high capacity leader, I want to make sure that I clarify. It doesn't mean that your best time, your use of time, is cleaning toilets and mopping floors.
Right.
Because it's probably not.
Right.
Because I've learned in ministry that you have those that are high capacity leaders so they can lead a bigger team with other people underneath them that are responsible and function and do it well. And then I've met people that aren't, and they can't lead themselves.
Right.
Much less a team. However, as a high capacity leader, maybe it's not the best use of your time to mop a floor, to clean a toilet. But here's the thing. In your heart of hearts, your attitude should be that if I need to do that, if the custodial staff calls in sick or something, it's not beneath me. I'm willing to do that because I know it's needed.
Right.
Even though 99% of the time, you're probably not ever going to do that job, but you should never have the attitude of, that's beneath me. I'm not going to do that, because then your heart's not in the right place.
Absolutely.
So,
because at that point you're in pride, like you think that you're better than that. And what I'm hearing from you is that you can have confidence in that you are a high capacity leader. This is the place that God has called you to. Right. But if it comes down to it, you're a servant of all. That's who Jesus was. He was a servant of all. And so if you are called to serve, you still have this position. You still are confident in being that high capacity leader, but you can do toilets if you need to, as a servant. So I love that. And you're doing that, the best for the team.
Yeah. Well, I like how you talked about serve.
Yeah.
And I think, thinking about it in the context of, how can I serve and not how can I be served is a very good way to do that. Hey, really, that's what humility sums up as. So, can I clock out now? Are we done?
No.
We've got more to talk.
You said 5.
We've got more to talk about. But really, if you summed it up, that would be a great way to sum it up. Humility is, how can I serve instead of being served? Looking at it from that perspective. And if you keep that in your mind, then you're going to stay in a good spot.
Yeah.
So another characteristic, because I did mention 5, would be that you can't be a closed book. Someone that's humble is an open book. And what I mean by that is this. I believe that we're all lifelong learners and that we should always be learning. Yeah. And the moment that we stop learning, you stop growing.
Absolutely.
And what's the opposite of growth? It's decay or decline or even death. And so if you're not growing in your team, your organization, or your ministry, then you're on the decline. And you're on the verge of, if you don't correct that, of eventually dying out. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody gets into leadership with the intention of dying, of failing. So you want to grow. So, but here's what I've also learned, and the Lord's challenged me with this, that I need to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
But I can't just learn from people that are in a higher position than me. You can't just be friends with people that can elevate you.
Right.
And that's the only people that you're connected with are those people that are going to place you in a higher position, that they're going to maybe give you more favor with the group or inside the organization. I've learned that I've got people in my life that are in ministry that are 10 and 15 years younger than me, don't have near the experience, both in ministry or life. But yet, if they knew how much I gleaned from them, I'm not going to use the word steal because that's not right. But if they knew how much...
Keeping it holy here.
If they knew how much I gleaned from them, then they would be shocked.
Right.
But I pull so much from those people that are 10 and 15 years younger than me. They don't have the life experience or the ministry experience, but they do things a little bit different. And I've noticed, okay, you can speak into my life because you keep me relevant.
That's good.
And you have to have humility to be able to sit at the table and know, hey, this person's younger than me by 15 years, but they deserve a seat at the table.
Right.
This person is younger than me by 15 years, but they deserve my time and my ear. And I can't just only surround myself with people that are my age or older. I can't just only surround myself with people that are more experienced or higher up than me. I got to be able to have people around me that maybe on the ladder, so to speak, would be below me, and then give them a chance to speak into my life. So at the beginning, when I introduced myself, I talked about my wife. So I'm going to give a shameless plug for her.
Go, Jenny.
She's a school teacher in Marietta City Schools.
Right.
But one of the things that she does that I love, I don't even know if she realizes how much I love it, is every year when the school year starts, and she started at a different school this year, but she likes to bake, so when she has cookies or extra cakes or things like that are left over, well, she packages them up and she takes them to the custodial staff at her school. And a lot of times those guys are forgotten about.
Yes.
You know, they clean the restrooms and the classrooms, but nobody really thinks about them. And the smiles on their faces when she brings those things in is huge. And then she gets a blessing too, because she's given all these goodies to them. And then at some point during the school year, you know, she gets it returned.
That's right.
They bring some of their goodies and things like that in. And so it just really blesses her. So I think that's a great way of just speaking into their lives of someone that may be a little bit less.
Right. Not thinking that we're better than anyone. That's kind of how I grew up was, you know, I wasn't afraid to talk to people who were, you know, on the outskirts or from the other side of the tracks, because actually I was one of them. And so, to be able to see the unseen, you know, we're not too good to talk to people. And I love the fact that you brought out learning from younger people. I mean, my daughter is an example. Emily, I learned so much from her. I mean, she has wisdom beyond her years. And so, it's good to have, you know, people of all generations, of all ages around us, because we can learn so much from everyone. While you're talking, I was thinking about one of the very first lessons that you taught me while you were mentoring me was you told me, Frida, always make sure that you stay teachable. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is that as long as you're teachable, that will keep you humble, because then you never get to the point where you think, oh, I've arrived and I know everything. So I love that. And it made me smile because, you know, I remember that. Always be teachable.
Well, I'm glad to know that you were listening. You know.
A little bit. I was listening a little bit.
That may have been the only thing.
That's the only thing that ever.
Friendship that you remember, but hey, at least I can lay my head on the pillow at night and know, hey,
you made an impact.
that stuck, you know. So that's great. That's but it's so true. And sometimes I've noticed that a lot of people that fail in ministry, one of the reasons they fail is because they don't remain teachable.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to have a good work ethic, and you got to be able to remain teachable and always be willing to learn. So
absolutely.
Another thing that I think about when I think about humility is, if you look at someone who's not humble, they're always looking for the spotlight.
Yes.
Something that I've worked on, and I don't always get it right. Let's be clear. We're talking about these 5 things, and I don't want anybody to listen or walk away from this and think, oh man, he's got his whole life together. Because guess what? There are days I fail, and I have to go to Jesus and say, look, I blew it.
You mean you're a human sinner too?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't do these things, and I wasn't humble, and I got mad because I didn't get recognition for something, or I got mad because, you know, somebody's idea they thought was better than mine. And I'm thinking, how dare they? But it happens. But the spotlight, you know, someone that's not humble, they're always looking for the spotlight. Right. They're always looking to be out in front. They're always looking to be elevated. And as a minister with humility, in your job, your organization, you got to be willing to put other people in the spotlight.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay that somebody's idea is better. It's okay that somebody gets more recognition. So it's not something that comes natural. Right. But eventually you reach the point, and a lot of times I feel this way. I look around at people that are in ministry or in leadership, and they just hit a home run.
Yes.
They did some event or they did something that just was incredible. And, you know, I'm on Facebook or Instagram, and I'm like, this is so awesome. You rocked. You did great. You know, knowing that this person probably, you know, they're going to get kudos. They're going to get elevation. In that moment, they may look better and stronger than me. So in my opinion, it's okay to celebrate others' victories. Right. And it keeps you humble in that way, because you keep things in proper focus. One of the main things with humility is it really is remembering your place.
Right.
And an easy way to remember your place in terms of your organization, your team, your church, the ministry, is to be able to celebrate other people's successes and champion them. And it shows us that you're secure.
Right.
You know, there's not insecurity that's there, and we all have to work through that.
Oh, absolutely.
There's all going to be times where the person next to you does something and they get the pat on the back, and I mean, you have to fight through, you know, the green-eyed monster of envy. You're frustrated, but at the same time, though, if you consistently, and I've had to do this, it was not natural for me at first, but I practiced celebrating other people's, and now it just seems like it feels more natural.
Yes, absolutely.
That naturally I'm going to celebrate other people. I do it without thinking about it now. I have to admit I'm happier because of it.
Right.
You know, you can be pretty miserable if you compare yourself all the time to other people and their successes and failures, and you know, what's the numbers that you're running compared to the church down the street. So celebrate them, then the people that are reaching, and then be faithful with what God's called you to do. And so I think that's one thing when we're dealing with humility, that it's good to keep that in mind. That's a characteristic that a humble person has. Because
at the end of the day, what are we, who are we supposed to be doing it for? Because the word says that do everything as unto the Lord. Right. So whether it's work, ministry, staying at home, wiping kids' bottoms, or preaching from the pulpit, it's all supposed to be for the glory of God.
Right. Well, we have our hands on the same rope.
Right.
And we're all pulling in the same direction, and it looks different, but the same thing is being accomplished.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the final thing that I think about in terms of someone who's humble, and something that I really try to practice, is there's going to be times in ministry or in leadership where you have to correct someone because they've done something wrong or they've made a mistake. So one of the things that I practice is, if I know that I'm at that point, that I've got to do that.
Right.
And I like to use the term taking the teeth out of the shark. What that means is, you know, Carey Nieuwhof, now I'll name drop.
I know who that is, right?
But Carey Nieuwhof has written an article, and one of the things he talks about in the article in dealing with conflict within your team or your organization is you confess before you address.
Oh.
So what that means is, I'm going to go to the person that I know that I'm going to have a hard conversation with, and I'm going to start it off with, hey, I've been in your shoes before. I want you to know that I messed up in this way, in this situation. And it allows them to, let their guard down a little bit, and they're going to be a lot more receptive to the criticism and the correction that you give them. And so if you're a person that's humble and you have humility, then you're willing to admit, hey, I'm vulnerable too.
Right.
Hey, I've been here before, and this is how I've messed up in this same situation or a similar situation. So now that you know that about me, now let me tell you where you messed up.
That's really good.
This is where you messed up. This is where you fell short. This is what you've got to fix.
Yeah.
And I've learned that when you approach it that way, people are so much more receptive to the criticism and the correction, and you're probably going to get a better response.
Right. And you're also causing less damage to the body of Christ.
So we talk about that, you know, you and I, even though not specifically on this podcast, but, you know, we've had conversations over our friendship and over the years where, you know, I've been around each other. You see conflict that happens, and then you see how it's handled. And,
absolutely.
And sometimes people don't handle it the right way. And someone and I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're arrogant, because I don't think it's intentional arrogance or a lack of humility, but it's so natural for us as humans to look for the negative in the situation and other people and to pick that apart.
Right. Well, it can also be their insecurity, because what you're saying is, you know, it looks like you're coming in with weakness, but really you're coming in with vulnerability.
Right.
And you're addressing the person, and you're sharing right off the front, like you said, because you're meeting that person where they're at. Like, hey, I'm not perfect either, but because I have this position in your life, I'm going to need to, you know, address some things. But I'm telling you first, hey, this is how I've messed up. And I love that. That is humility. Instead of, you know, blindsiding someone and just like correcting correcting them maybe out of your own insecurity because you are afraid of some things or whatever, and feeling like you have to address certain things. And that sometimes that can cause damage, but when you go in with humility and you lower yourself, that really preserves that person's dignity. It preserves that person's heart, and that will make more of a difference than coming in with maybe, with pride, because insecurity is actually just pride.
Sure.
So.
And a couple things I've said today, and then I'll clarify. There are going to be moments in leadership where you have to have the hard conversation,
right,
and you try the route that I just said and it doesn't work, and then you have to just be direct.
Right.
So I'm not excusing anyone from saying you never are direct, because there are moments where you have to do that.
Right.
But if you've built the relationship with the person, or if you approach them this way first,
right,
then it usually will go better when you have to be direct and have a hard conversation than if that's just the first approach. Now, again, that's the way that I have learned.
Right.
That's what's worked for me. I've tried it the other way. It doesn't go well.
No.
But this way it works. And usually I don't have to have too many of those second conversations, because the first conversation goes well, the individual's receptive, and then you see change.
Right.
You see an effort. And I've worked for people that have done it both ways, and I can tell you that the person that does it the way that I just mentioned, you want to do well for that person.
Right.
You want to do well. You want to meet their expectation. Where, okay, me personally, if someone approaches me the other way, my tendency is I just want to dig my heels in.
Right.
And I just want to be like, I don't want to change anything because how you have approached me.
Right.
Probably not the best attitude.
But it's hard.
It is. But one of the things in leadership that you learn is how to deal with people.
Right.
And this has been the most successful way in terms of conflict management for me to deal with people, to where you actually get the results. And it stems from humility.
Right.
I know that's what we're talking about today. And so you can win in those conflict management situations if you have humility, you approach them with humility.
Because wouldn't you agree, as a shepherd, as a pastor, we are called to shepherd, not just, we aren't necessarily called to shepherd people's behaviors. We're actually called to shepherd people's hearts. And so what you're saying is, like, you go in, you humble yourself, and you're after that person's heart, because really that's what God's after, is after that person's heart. Because if we have, because an attitude of humility, that's where it comes from. And so if we as leaders, shepherds, go in and are prideful and put them on the defense, well, they don't feel safe.
Right.
You've just attacked them. They feel attacked. And so, of course, anyone that is feeling attacked, they're going to buck up, or either they're going to, like the trauma responses, they're going to fight, flight, fawn, and I can't remember the other one, but you're going to get a reaction from them. Right. And really sometimes that may not even be them. It's just they don't know what to do because in the manner that you approach them. But I have watched you over the years, like the way that you have such a respect from people, and you do have a way of being able to bring correction because of the vulnerability that you show to people. And they can leave feeling respected. They can leave feeling loved and leave feeling with dignity. And I was thinking when you were talking about how, like, when we you became my mentor, and we were getting to know each other. And one thing that we set off right off the bat, because that was one thing I said, hey, as far as confrontation comes, it's probably going to come because we have two different personalities. I want you to be honest with me, but do it in love. And so we kind of had like this, I guess, agreement or whatever of how, and I like it. And actually, I don't think you ever got around to correcting me. Yeah. I think that we just were able to, in such a way, understood each other, and were able to really just maintain a working relationship that we really didn't have a lot of conflict. But at the end of the day, too, you're one of those people, like, you're a very safe person, because humility makes someone safe.
Right.
And so I really always appreciated that about you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I thank you for saying that. I have to say, like, the things we've talked about today, they don't come natural.
Right.
You have to put that out there. It's just not natural to do the things. It's habits that you develop over time. Yeah. It's stuff that you have to practice. And you're probably going to be terrible about it at first.
Right.
Because it's just not human nature and it's not natural. But you work on it and it becomes a habit. It becomes more natural. And then sure, this last topic we were talking about, you gain an audience. You have the ability to speak in people's lives because they'll listen to you.
Absolutely.
Whereas, if you go about it with a lack of humility, then there's a lot of things that happen in an organization or a team with a lack of humility.
You lose respect for your your leaders.
You do. Yeah. And it kills your opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
And in the end, your whole team or organization can only grow as far as you drag them.
Absolutely.
But if you're willing to allow other people to have a spotlight and you have humility, then it actually, as crazy as it sounds, it almost sounds like it's counterintuitive, but you actually will grow bigger and go further than if you don't do it that way.
Right.
So I want to thank you for having me, and I enjoyed this topic. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you coming, and keep walking in humility. I hope one day we'll see a book from you.
Hey, challenge accepted.
Okay. Well, until next time, we wish you a Merry Christmas. Love you.